Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life.
Hats.
Brendo, how are we?
Pretty well.
I was ready there. I was watching you.
I know.
I'm shit at this generally. I'd not paying attention, but
I do like to surprise you, so that's good.
so surprise the guest.
Surprise the guest. Oh, he's sitting here. He knew I was going to record.
You're not going to take your gear off.
All right,
Daz, how are you, mate?
Yeah.
Good boys, what's going on?
Not a lot. So before we get started, I would actually like to know how to actually pronounce your username. Daz B.
Daz B. Yep.
Someone Daz Beer. Daz Beer.
Yeah, Greg Foss struggles with it too. He introduces me from time to time. He says Bayer, but just Daz B. Nice and bogan.
That's awesome.
I had a bit of a dig at Foss. I don't think I tagged him, but it was aimed at him. I was
That's a bit cowardly.
I just forgot, and then I was you can't. I just forgot, and then you can't edit it, and if you delete it, you're an idiot. So I was like, okay, let it just slide. But he always comes out with it's just math. So I was like, it's just maths, and that's just English.
Yeah. Did he not?
No, there's nothing. But send him that one. Mate, you're a slippery customer. We've been trying to get you on.
Oh yeah.
We've been trying to get you on here for a while. So actually,
got to pencil you boys in. It's we got priorities or in.
No,
it's just been a crazy couple of months, boys. So
that's good.
I mean, to be fair, it was leading right up to Christmas, so that was pretty tricky.
But initially started with our second. So we've done 20 something now, and it was actually the second one with Princey who said you need to get Daz on. So so finally we got around to it, mate. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Maybe we should also talk about the photographs that you sent us prior to coming on. Can we talk about that?
Sure.
They were good, actually.
We'll not publish them, Daz, but yeah.
What were they? You're wearing was it Star Wars or something?
Some sort of
No, this is a very high time preference. Oodie. There's these new things out at the moment.
Oh, an oodie. Is that an oodie?
Yeah, it's an oodie. It's an oversized poncho kind of thing. And because I had coronavirus, I was in my caravan with the dealing with a little fever. So I had that thing on and off about 30 times. But it's a oversized woolen lined hoodie, basically like a big poncho, and it's got Seinfeld shit all over it. So
Seinfeld, that's right. Do you know what I like about that too? You didn't send us just one picture. You sent us a whole catalogue of different poses.
It was great. It was like he was auditioning for a show.
You were lucky I didn't do the normal George Costanza pose. I was going to strip down with the jocks and just sprawl out in the bed, but I had no one to take the photo. So
oh no,
brilliant, man!
Awesome.
Brilliant. That was really funny. Okay, mate, have you got a beer? Are we good to go?
I sure do.
Right, good lad.
Giddy up.
Why did you need a hoodie up in northern Queensland?
Because I was feverish.
You got
so we go camping a fair bit up the tablelands up here, and it gets cold through winter. So the little caravan, a carriage here where I'm sitting in. So
caravan, a carriage. That's a Star Wars reference.
It gets pretty cold up there. So got to keep right. But mind you, 12 degrees for me is freezing. So if it's 12 degrees, that thing's getting on.
Yeah, wow.
I've got a. So when I was a 20-something-year-old, as I came over here as the backpacker, before I lived here,
seedy backpacker,
and kind of went all around the country. But I actually travelled between Darwin and Cairns, and the oldest car. They actually had to be hot wired to start, right? Between Darwin and Cairns, hot wired to start. It was the stupidest thing. 2 girls and me, no mechanical knowledge whatsoever between the 3 of us. And that car is still parked in a street in Cairns somewhere because we left it. So that was 20 years ago, man. It's probably still there. Evelyn, we called the car. I don't even know what kind of car it was. It's sort of goldy brown. So if you've ever seen a car that looks like that kicking about, that's probably mine.
Where are those girls now?
I have no idea. England, probably. I think
wow.
they're English.
Wow.
And the only other funny story I have from that is, you know, the crocodile. You'll be old enough to remember Crocodile Dundee, are you?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, so
I can see some greys in his beard. He's good.
Yeah, there's some dust in there for sure.
so the original one, the pub was, what was it? The Walkabout Creek.
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah.
The Walkabout Creek is in this little town called McKinley, which is sort of past Mount Isa somewhere, but it's quite a big detour. And we went there, and it was a wild outback Australian pub, and there was two guys drinking at the bar, and they were having a fight over whose car was whose. And when we went out to the car park, one of them was in a ute and one was in a sedan. They were so drunk we didn't know which one was brilliant. Yeah. Anyway, so we digress. Cheers, Dad. Wait, where do you want to start? You've
Up to you.
you hit the ground
Go
running.
for it.
Well, let's
Yeah,
go there.
well-
Like, so you've when did you first kind of start stacking?
I'm a latecomer, so I'm
I'm a
talking
latecomer.
March 2020.
Oh, that's well, it's Feb, so yeah, nice. And you've
Yeah,
done
maybe
a fuckload
more.
more than me, so holy shit.
Well, I'm a bit
right there.
Proof of
autistic.
work.
I'm a bit autistic, so it's one of those things where I've got an addictive personality. So it's
I think we all are, mate. Don't
been-
worry about it.
yeah, that's right. So it's just consumed me, to be honest. And yeah, I spend most of my waking time.
And how does the wife? How's the wife take it?
She's coming round.
Yeah, that's what I say.
Oh, mate, you've done well in 2 years then.
Yeah, she's coming around. She's I could call her a Bitcoiner. She's not down the rabbit hole yet, but she's definitely
Did she
teetering
do?
over the edge.
Did she do the thing that my wife does? And look, like when you try to talk to her about it, she just goes, "Brendan." Oh well,
Dogs.
hang on, Brendan. Yes,
Twice.
Brendo.
So can I just say this? Just before we came on, Daz, we were having a conversation about whether we should set up a Lightning wallet for Doc's wallet, and then
Cool.
and then what we're going to do is, I don't actually know. We'll build it up over the course of the year, and then we'll donate it
Yeah,
to something worthwhile at
Yeah.
the end of the year.
I reckon that's a great idea.
So you've just cost yourself
is a
a couple
great
of
idea.
stats there.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So Brendo docks himself to Brendan. Oh no!
Well, I would have never have made that connection.
But what I was going to say is that my wife just goes, "I trust you." You know what I mean? Like she's not interested, but she's interested
Yeah,
enough. If we're in a sort of party setting or with friends over, she can actually chime in now and say things, and I'm so proud of her for doing it. But then when I get a bit, she's just like, "Just do what you do."
Yeah, it's enough now. Let's just talk about normal stuff.
yeah.
So I, as I said, a little bit autistic. So I got spreadsheets everywhere with stuff coming in. So at one point, when that raging bull market, so this time last year, was going through, I was just screenshotting our personal net worth
Yeah.
and sending that to her. So it was around that time then when she went, "Okay, you're cool." Like,
Can I ask, did you stop screenshotting that? No way?
no, I haven't done recently, but
It's not done one the last quarter, are you? So let's go back, Daz. Let's go back. We'll get into the writing and we'll get into maybe what you're doing now after that.
Mm-hmm.
But can we go back to before your 2020? Like, what was the touch point that brought you in, mate?
Yeah, so we a couple of guys at work were probably trading. I can't remember if it was 2015 or 2017. All I remember was I had no money because I was an apprentice. So I did an apprenticeship quite late. So the that period in my life 10 years ago was it probably would have been maybe 8, I reckon. So we're probably thinking anyway, it was early. So these guys were trading a bit of Bitcoin, trading a bit of crypto. Probably first touch point, but I just brushed it as being a complete scam and a waste of money, and these guys were gonna get wrecked. So before I knew what that word meant, so that was probably the first touch point. And then again, probably 2017 bull market. Definitely, there was some guys floating around doing a bit of stuff as well. And again, come across my radar, dismissed it, and it wasn't really until I started digging down the value investing rabbit hole. So that was my journey into it. So started, good wage, started putting a bit of good coin together, kids, gone through the early stages of new childbirth. So, when you don't down to one wage and so forth. So, sort of hit that turning point where I was able to put a bit of money away. And then I was like, okay, now what do I do with this? And I just completely consumed down the value investing rabbit hole.
Preston
and Preston. Yeah. So got onto Preston, and then was basically going right back through their back catalogue of all their pods. So I started from pod 1 and, listened to most all the way through. And then I think it was his 2015, maybe first touch 2017 or 2015 when they started, I think 2017. So it was just funny that it aligned. And, one of those sayings where everyone finds Bitcoin at the time that they deserve or the time that they need. So it was around probably the flip when coronavirus all started really ramping up that I hit the 2017 pods, right? And could hear him starting to have those conversations and could hear his penny start to drop. And then I just went along with the ride.
We're talking March 2020, but you went back to like 16, 17 pods and worked through the investors podcast stuff. Is that sorry?
Yeah, so it was probably January, I reckon, when I was starting to get through some of that content where they're hitting the 2017 bull market. Yeah. And you could hear Preston go from we got to talk about this because it's on everyone's radar to there's something here. You know what I mean? And then I guess when it tweaked my interest, I probably jumped forward then and started just hitting like, this sounds really interesting. And then it consumed me. And then it was probably, I think it was March by the time I bought my first, it coincided with the drop. Oh, and that's probably the biggest catalyst too, right? Was I've said this on a couple of pods that I've been on now is I had all these spreadsheets feeding in price data from stock valuation. So I read a heap of books on stock valuation, and Preston's is a great one, by the way, if anyone's interested in how do you actually value a stock. There's one he wrote called the Warren Buffett Accounting Book. Highly recommend going through that if you're interested in stock investing. How do you actually know what you're paying for? So I used that formula to look at book value and to try and, assess these stocks as to what's a decent price to pay, what's the intrinsic value of stocks. So I had all that in a massive spreadsheet with the ASX 200 at least, and I had a few more in there, and auto price feeds in. And then we had that March 2020 drop. And then, there was only like 2 or 3 stocks that come up as being fair value before that.
Yep.
And then the March 2020 price drop, we had like a 40 to 50% drop in the stock market. And there was probably 5 more out of that whole universe of stocks. And I'm going, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. There is something seriously wrong with what I'm doing. And that's where I sort of started digging down the macro. I was listening to this Bitcoin stuff, and then I had a Real Vision subscription. I was listening to the Real Vision daily briefings, which were really powerful at the beginning. They've gone a bit wayward lately, but
that just threw up in his mouth a little bit, I think.
Yeah,
well, the same with me. They've completely. I can't even.
You know that point when your dad says, "Yeah, I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed." That's how I feel about Raoul. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm a bit angry, but I'm just disappointed. I'm more disappointed.
I echo those sentiment 100% because he disappoints me every time he tweets out, And I think he understands the fundamentals. And this is the difference between Raoul Powell with Real Vision. He's a trader, and he's just after the next trade, after the next quick buck. Fiat gains, exactly. And we're Bitcoiners, like, without sounding corny, we're trying to change the world with a money that works, and I just don't think he cares.
I do. There was something nagging at me when I was watching, because I really have to admit I enjoyed it to begin with. Like, finally a guy from the old world is coming across. I was like, this is good. But then I'm sort of sitting there, he's talking about himself as one of the guys as he's sitting in his house in the Caymans with a bar bigger than my house, and I'm like, yeah, there's a disconnect here. What is it? What is it? It's staring you in the face, It's staring you in the face. He's not one of the guys. He's a guy who's been successful in fiat gains. And whatever, totally. He can do what he does, but it's not good. It's of no interest to me now.
Yeah, I'm the same. So I was actually a Real Vision subscriber. I was on one of the tiers anyway, and I used to absorb a lot of it. But the whole crypto thing that they've gone down, it's just totally turned me off. So I don't subscribe to that anymore. I'd rather stack sats. I think it'll do better for me in the long run listen to most of that. And yeah, I mean, I do still tune in. This is the other difference I've sort of come to realize as well. There's a lot of even the daily briefing now, what they talk about. It's a lot of high time preference. They're talking about the next trade. They're talking about what's affecting things right now in a trade you would have put on today and get out of tomorrow, you know. And I just don't have the time or inclination to bother with that shit anymore. It's more about the long game. Don't get me wrong, I still look at stocks and I still look at various investment opportunities, but you know, most of the time I'm looking at, you know, where your what's that terminology they like to use? It's your opportunity cost. And for me, I just keep coming back to Bitcoin. I know I look at stocks, they're overvalued. You look at bonds, they're yielding nothing. You look at cash, it's going backwards due to inflation. So it's like, what the fuck do I do with this excess money? I'm very lucky. I'm able to generate above my outgoings, but where do I park that?
Yeah.
And every time you just come back to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's the way in order just to give myself a little bit more time and headspace, I've just kind of gone to thinking of, unless something has got at least 50% Bitcoin on their balance sheet as a corporation, I'm not even going to look. I'm not even going to look because I know I'm going to come to that conclusion now. It's the opportunity cost of the Bitcoin. So if they've got 50% of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, maybe that's of interest. Maybe there's a hedge there of some description. And in the future, I think corporations are going to become very interesting again. 10 years from now, and that's going to be Bitcoin is going to become very boring at that point. But boring at 10 million a coin. But but it'll be 10 million a coin Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday as well. So and at that point you go looking for other things that are of interest to maybe.
Who was saying $1 billion a coin? Was that
Fidelity?
Fidelity.
Yeah, $1 billion a coin in 100 years or something. I don't know. Crazy. But the fact that Fidelity,
I'm in for that.
Yeah.
Fidelity, 11.1 trillion under management.
They're doing something right.
Yeah. Well, maybe they're conning people well. Sorry, mate. So, first of all, before we blow too much smoke up Preston's arse, do you listen to anything other than a Wednesday now, or do you just listen to a Wednesday?
Mostly Wednesday.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the other stuff has lost its appeal, if I'm to be perfectly honest.
It's funny, isn't it? It drops off.
So I've just worked out, before we started recording, I looked at you and I'm like, man, you're like familiar. And I think it's because you look like me, you handsome son of a bitch.
Sorry, man. He's way better looking than you.
We can't do much about that.
What was actually fit me off, man?
Oh, no, whatever.
Oh, you've got your Ethereum hat on again.
No, it's Volcom. I have a Volcom hat, and every time hats is like, it's fucking Ethereum.
It does look like Ethereum. Yeah, it looks like it. I saw it. Did you see that meme? It was the first time I saw it. I think you guys might have even shared it or tagged something. It was like an empty wallet on its side. Pointed out, and that's the Ethereum logo. It's such a classic.
It's perfect. Whoever came up with that is so good.
Oh, the meme, the power in the meme is wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Can we talk about as much as you're happy to share, like your actual fiat life? Like, what do you do for? Can you talk about what you do for work? Because you've got quite a broad. When we get to the writing, I can see where some of it's come from your work, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm like, that has got to be a lot of that's self-taught. I'm thinking
he's already told Princey by the sounds of it, so
that's all right.
But Princey's over there. We need it back in Oz here.
He's over
I'm a sparky by trade, and I've got engineering degree. So I'm not an engineer, but I've got a science degree in engineering, bachelor degree in engineering. So it's like 3/4 of an engineer. I spent 7.5 years studying that, and decided it's one of those things. I did like a back of the napkin calculation on if I was to finish doing an engineering degree, where would that end up? And I've got quite a good job, and I've got an opportunity to, get rewarded for output. So it was one of those conscious decisions where if I finish my engineering degree, I'd actually end up on less fiat through my day job. So I decided to just stay here. But I've got a background in sales, marketing. I've got a pretty diverse sort of background. I floated around a lot. Working salary jobs sucks ass, basically. I worked a lot of salary jobs until I'm in the job that I'm in now, where it's one of those sort of capitalist, socialist sort of things. If you're want to look at it that way without getting too political, it's as soon as you're rewarded for output, you tend to up your output, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
incentives,
very background.
Yeah. Okay. So the writing didn't start until about maybe May or June of 21. Is that true? Like in terms of your medium stuff?
Yeah.
So there's a year
right,
of. So what I'm trying to work out is you're in at 20. You've been consuming a bit. You've actually sat and probably just, as the autistics do, they've just consumed massive quantities probably in a year. You probably sat for a year without speaking. Is that? And then you're
pretty
like,
much,
and then you're like,
read
I'm ready to talk now.
Podcasts, YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much. It was one of those things. It just happened. I didn't actually plan on. Gee, I'd really like to start writing. It was we started to spew. I was a member of a crypto group actually, so I was still shitcoining. When I not to a degree, I was basically always like 80% Bitcoin, 10% Ethereum, and 5% shitcoin kind of thing, and just float around the side. So. At that point in my life, and then when Bitcoin started to tank through, I was looking to trade. I was actually looking at trading shitcoins mainly. So I was teaching myself how to trade and was looking at chart patterns and candlestick patterns and all that sort of stuff. And then I don't know, it was just one of those things where Bitcoin started spewing, and then I just knew that's where I needed to be. It was kind of just this light clicked. And it's like, I need to get rid of all these shit coins because they were tanking harder than anything else. But I wasn't that exposed. But I don't know. It was that point. I needed that in my life for me to realize that Bitcoin is the king. And that's where, I want to preserve my wealth with everything else that was going on. Bitcoin was the thing. And I was just sort of, I don't know what it was. I still can't even, thinking about it, I've never even really thought about what inspired me to write that first article. But it was kind of like, I wanted to share it with this crypto group that I was in to say, don't be spooked out of your bags. This is an institutional shakeout. So it was pretty close to the Real Vision crypto gathering, right? They hold that event every year or so. And then they had all these hedge fund managers and all these institutional investors and all that basically saying, the institutions are here. They've been waiting to change their corporate, their governance models, to allow them to basically hold crypto assets. And it basically just rang so true to me when I started looking at resistance levels on trading and where those order blocks are, where you get a lot of consolidation on price about people scooping up coins, and then started looking at a lot of on-chain metrics and all this sort of stuff. And it was just so clear to me that was an institutional shakeout. Every single resistance level was sold and they just flushed out leverage. And I just started piecing all that together. And I said, oh my fucking God, I just need to write this down and share it. And it was more of a motivation for, like, I got a lot of friends and family, and there's a lot of guys at work. We've got disposable income. We can make investment decisions. So it was more about trying to get something down on paper, just to say to everybody, don't freak the fuck out, because it is so evident that the institutions are here shaking you out and they want your Bitcoin.
Yeah, they've been doing it in traditional markets forever, right? So they're good at it. Exactly. They're good at it. They're good at frightening people out of their money.
And you add to that point is the fact that now they've got access to all this data. So, all these order flows and all the on-chain metrics, and they know it better than anyone. And they just programmatically do this shit now. They don't even have to think about it. They just go, if you get, X amount of leverage built up and it hits an X amount of level, and then we're at this consolidation level and we've got so much volume at that price point, just sell, Yeah. And so what a lot of people don't understand is these institutions will buy a big bag of Bitcoin, but they want a bigger bag of Bitcoin. So they're quite willing to sacrifice that smaller bag of Bitcoin to start that sell-off and make everything start to spew. And then the main driver of these sell-offs, which people don't understand, is how that leverage works and all those stops. So they can see that sitting in the order book saying, we've got X amount of liquidity sitting at a various level. If we sell off and we make it hit that point, we're going to flush out all those short stops, or those losing the word I'm looking for, but they can flush out basically all those leveraged longs, basically. So if you set your stop loss at a certain level, that sits on the order book, and they can basically, it's just transparent, and that's a great thing about the market. But it's also, this market is so transparent. We've never had anything like it. But those guys have been around, for decades, if not centuries, doing exactly. They know how to shake people out of their positions.
And for a newer person getting involved,
so it was one of those things where I thought.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, mate, that was a bit of a delay.
I was going to say, for a newer person getting involved, the idea of setting a stop loss seems like a good idea. That seems like the conservative, sensible thing to do, right? And you're like, but all you're actually doing there is signaling your intention to somebody with way more capital than you have, and they can stay solvent for longer than you can. So
absolutely.
So I mean, the best thing you can do is sorry. Go
so absolutely no. Yeah. This is something that these kind of massive institutions have been doing for years, no matter the asset.
Sure, if it's liquid enough, like they'll not do it in something that's not liquid because it's hard.
Yeah, quick.
Right, but So if go on, Daz.
I was just going to add to that, just for Brendo, that obviously leverage hasn't always been around either, but they definitely use sell-offs and shakeouts like this in order to spook naive investors out of their position. So if you went into say Bitcoin, you went and bought it at $90,000 or $80,000 Australian. They just know the emotions of people. So all they know is if you sell at 60, they're going to get spooked out. They know that anyway, but now they've just got that additional data where you can look at the order book on the exchanges and you can see where all those levels are. You can see where all the orders are sitting for people to buy or people to sell. So you've got stop losses on an exchange or whatever, someone can come along and actually look at that order book.
Yeah.
Publicly.
The Robinhood model is they don't actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Daz, but I believe that you don't actually pay for trading to engage a trade on Robinhood, but they are making their money from selling the order book to the big guy, right? So
is that not a breach of privacy?
Well, it's
wrong.
It's
right?
wrong,
but it's just how it's been done. Is that what you're saying?
It's how it's been done. So there's a really interesting book.
Fucked.
I haven't read it, but I get the premise of it like you couple that with these high frequency traders. So the high frequency traders are the guys that buy that data off Robinhood, and they will front run all those trades. So not only are they selling what's in the order book to see what's coming, they will actually go and front run that trade. So if you want to buy a stock and you say, I'm prepared to buy it at $10.02, they will go and buy it and arbitrage off the exchanges for $10.01 and then sell it back to Robinhood at $10.02 and just shave that 1 cent off. And that shit is happening everywhere. So the big competition for these guys is, believe it or not, how direct can you run a fiber from, say, the New York Stock Exchange to the Chicago Stock Exchange? And they're looking at, if I go over this mountain or around the mountain, if I can get nanoseconds off that trade, then they can front run everyone else. And it's just all data and it's all computerized. And, this is the big thing. I guess if I can say one thing about trying to trade. Now, it's, okay, shit coins you could have flipped them quick. It's just like the casino. In 2017, you had all these ICOs, and if you got in early, you could have, 10 times or 100 times your money. The new guys to the space have got to realize it's a different environment from 2017 to now. Those guys, these high frequency traders, you're going up against algo trading, you're going up against computational power, and you're going up against people who know how to take the money off you. It is just not fucking worth the risk. Just stack Bitcoin, DCA every day, and ride it out over the long term. That is the best advice and the only advice I give to anybody. And I say, just do not fucking trade crypto, because you can't fucking beat them. You need to have an edge.
Yeah,
people do. All right,
the leverage is massive, and the leverage is a different scale. And also, I was listening to Willie Woo on a podcast not that long ago, and I think he's clearly a smart guy, clearly a better trader than I'd ever be. But he said he is only consistently being making money since October 2020, right? Because of, he's learned a lot, and that's but my argument to that would be October 2020. If you actually, and crypto market, not crypto market, because he's in everything, but and he's a trader and he doesn't hide that. But if you couldn't make money in the crypto market between October 2020 and today, I mean, your blind grandmother could do that, right? So I mean, so there's a guy who has clear talent, no doubt about it. But even he only started consistently making money when the whole market went up, right? On it, and that's what he says. He's not somebody pointing at him. That's his self-admission.
Absolutely.
So if he can't do it, or that's what it takes for him to do it, the rest of us cannot do it.
So what you're saying is, in summary, everything but Bitcoin is a scam.
I mean,
giddy up.
Even Bitcoin as a trading vehicle is a scam.
Yeah. You can't trade Bitcoin. You can't trade it. You can't beat these guys. I mean, they just know how to do it, and they've got
the volume.
Computer science geeks to sit there and look at all that and bring all that data in, and just shave it off. You can't trade against Bitcoin. I mean, the only way you can have any success in doing it, in my humble opinion, take a hat tip, Preston, is to DCA into it every day.
And look at the 200-week moving average, because no trading bot is caring about that, because they don't have a 4-year, they don't have a 4-minute time frame. So please. I mean, just DCA and think long term, and don't overextend yourself, and don't use leverage. Like that's, and then the level of risk there is I would say minuscule. Well, where do you find something that's safer than that? I don't know. Here's a question for you: should it be called MCA?
Why MCA? No. I'm actually asking the question. Why MCA?
Mining cost average.
Oh, right. Why?
Because if
mining cost average.
Should people be mining?
You ready or not?
Just not, brother. Should people be home mining and actually finding their mining cost average rather than their dollar cost average?
I'm quite impressed with YMCA.
That's either very
strong. Look, good question. Mining is arguably, in Australia, our energy costs are exorbitant.
Yep.
Unless you can minimize your direct energy costs. So like each state's different, right? But so if we were to take local utility example, which I'm connected into, which just so happens to be the place I work, and believe it or not, I don't get free power. I like to tell people I do just to stir them up, but I don't get free power. If your energy cost, so mine is off the top of my head 21 and a half or 21 and 3/4 cents per kilowatt hour. That is not profitable unless you're running an S19.
That's well cheaper than New South Wales, I'm sure.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So we are regulated. So we are government owned, government utility outside of Brisbane. So there are some retail guys there, but that is still like at that level with an S9, not profitable to mine. So I think it's
even today,
it's not quite
even
double.
today with an S9.
Even today with an S9.
Okay, so Brendo, I don't know if you've heard this, but Brendo just recently put 13 kilowatts of solar on his roof, and he's feeding in 5 to the grid. What would you do with the spare 8 has?
I'd be mining. So I've got 6.6
even after
on my
saying
roof.
that.
Yeah, but it's free.
Yeah. So
paying.
you are then going to offset that 21.5 cents. So you're going to be basically like if you were Queensland and you had you're allowed to export 5 kilowatts back to the grid, you'd only be getting, like in Queensland, it's only like 7 cents per kilowatt hour export.
Yeah, I think it's 6 here now, is it?
Yeah, it's about 6. So I'm paying 29 cents a kilowatt hour.
29, and so it depends on your home use. There's a lot of variables that go into it, but I would be firing up those miners and doing mining through the day. So I've got 3 S9s at home now. I've only just recently acquired another 2, so I'm just going through. I've got 2 working well, and we can talk about the best way to do that with firmware and all that sort of stuff in a sec if you're interested in talking about it. But my intention is to get those running when I'm not home. So
so we got this caravan and we like going away a fair bit. So we just had, 9 days down at Airlie Beach, which was magnificent. And I had 2 of those miners mining because when I'm not home, I've got a battery as well. So I've got a 10.5 kilowatt hour LG Chem battery. So the whole premise is I generate through the day when it's nice and sunny. The house draws whatever it draws. My wife works from home, so she's normally home, maybe got an aircon going through summer. Anything excess charges the battery. When the battery's full, it exports to the grid. So there's that export through the grid it's not much because we're pretty heavy power users, but that's what you're not profitable. It's not worth your while exporting, particularly at 6 cents per kilowatt hour. You're very, very incentivized to go and buy an S9 because you can acquire S9s fairly cheap, anywhere from probably 800 Australian to $1,000 Australian. You can probably get one landed at your house.
Where are you getting them from, though?
So I have bought a couple with Wiz. So we had a few our fellow mate Wiz. So we had a little congregation, and we did a order up with a few of us, various Bitcoiners, located at various locations, and so we minimised the shipping costs. We bought them from Kaboom Racks, which is a Telegram group run by Nick Foster on that no doxing required. That's what he goes by on Twitter, and very good quality secondhand gear. So they will go through, they'll make sure they're clean, they'll make sure they fire up, they make sure they work before they ship them out.
So they buy them from who's previously used them, they clean them up and on sale.
Correct.
They're not just a marketplace for other people to sell.
Correct. Yeah, they sell direct. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, they will go. Obviously they got a heap of S9s from the mass China exodus. So the S9s were often not even worth shipping over. That's why you could get S9s, and you can still, as far as I'm aware, you can still get S9s fairly cheap, around that $1,000 Australian mark landed. For me personally, I just wrote that off as just a necessary cost to get them, right? I don't even factor that into my profitability calculation. It's more about now for me, investing that, $3,000 to get the 3, that was just a capital cost, write that off. And now it's more about what's it going to cost me to stack sats and non-KYC stats. So I dollar cost average every day. My personal stack, I don't mind telling, I try and do $20 Bitcoin a day on average. That fluctuates, but that's sort of the mark I'm trying to hit. And then it was a conscious decision to me. It's like, well, why don't I roll some of that off and pay for electricity and get non-KYC Bitcoin? Yeah. So that was my goal in order to do that. And then you've got to have the calculation of, if I've got those S9s running hot 24/7, where's the cutoff between, how much you're prepared to pay a premium for stacking sats that way rather than the dollar cost average. So, there's a little bit of forethought you've got to go through. And for me, it's more about, I've got one S9 running all the time. That's sort of my cutoff, because I've sort of worked out how much I generate with electricity versus the battery and all that sort of stuff. I'm happy to do that. And then when I go away, on the weekend, I'll fire all 3 up and just have that morning 24/7 while I'm away, because I had battery, so I can charge the battery while I'm going, and then that basically gets sucked dry through the night, and then obviously there's a few hours there where I'm full.
I don't know. So Daz, I don't know if we can edit this, but there's some audio is coming through like you're really drunk. Like it's slowing right down, and then
you're like Neo, dodging the bullet.
Or what's that? What's the one on Total Recall? Chewy.
Yeah. Do you want to keep going, or do you want to try and get another line?
Oh, there's no way I can edit that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair
Yeah.
Let's see. It's freezing again. You hearing us, Daz?
No, we lost him. That's all right. We might. How about we? Yeah, we might cut and then come back. Oh no, there you are. You there?
There, we back.
We are back.
I don't know what's going on. Sorry, I just changed network because I'm sitting in my caravan, right? So I've got a Wi-Fi extender, and I've got two of them, and I think I'm sitting in this really crappy spot between the two. But is that coming through all right?
Mate, you're good right now. Most of the time it's been good. We'll just have a couple of moments, but it's all good.
Just clip your kids up the ear for watching Netflix or something.
Yeah, they're probably doing all those things, streaming with their mates.
So one question I was going to ask is, so you were saying that you leave one running all the time, then you go away, you have three running. So what do you do? Just end of the day, switch off two?
Yep.
That's it?
Yep. So there's ways you can automate that. And I'm probably going to play with that over the next couple of months and have a muck around with that. You can put relays and smart timers, use Raspberry Pis and microcontrollers and all this sort of stuff, which is just my nerdy side coming out from the Sparky thing.
Yeah, but that's going to say you're obviously technically competent. So how like who can do this? Who would you say should do this or potentially could do this, and who would you say maybe it's just better for you to buy Bitcoin? Like,
look, anyone, if you're comfortable setting up, anyone who's dialed into their modem before, there's your mark. If you've dialed into your modem before and you're able to do that and you're comfortable with that process, you can mine. So the way you talk to these miners is through an IP address on your network. So you have to go through that interface. So if you're comfortable with basic networks at home, you can mine. Like, honestly, there's not much to it. If something goes wrong, then you're in trouble, right? Because I've done a little bit of diagnosis. So I've had one miner that's got a minor issue, pun intended, which I've had to play around and try and find out if it's the hash board, if it's the control board, if it's the fans. So there's a issue I'm dealing with at the moment, and that's probably outside of the wheelhouse of most people to feel comfortable, plugging that stuff in and taking it out. But look, if you're a reasonably competent person technically, then mining is definitely within, like, it's not rocket science.
Yeah. I reckon it's your next step, just because of the whole solar. Just because,
maybe. You've given me
you've overspec. Deliberately overspec on the solar.
Deliberately, yeah. But you've given me food for thought as far as working out my ongoing costs for stacking currently versus actually, getting some miners and actually going right. So. And again, I'm happy to share. So I currently do $100 a week. So what's that? That's $400 a month, $1,200 a quarter, in just stacking KYC sats.
Yep.
So if I was to then get miners and plug them in and run them, then I've got $1,200 a quarter, and stop stacking KYC. I've then, you know what I mean? I open up that.
S19s are profitable no matter sort of what price at the moment, which are...
But how much are they? They're like $17,000 or something stupid, aren't they?
Correct.
Yeah.
So you've got a long time there to get back your capital. So, at $1,000 an S9, as I was saying to you boys, I was happy to write that off as just being a cost in order for me to get that, right? So it obviously there's a payback period for that as well. And you could argue, was I better just to stack $3,000 with a Bitcoin in the long run? Probably. Right. But, also there's that factor that, don't dox myself here with taxman, but like that non-KYC Bitcoin has a premium, potential there as well, right? If I end up in El Salvador.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
Wifey, are you listening? We're going to El Salvador. She's not on board with that yet. But, when we're in El Salvador.
Have you even dropped that as an idea?
I have, totally. I want out of this shithole. This is turning into a bad place. But
I have still hope. I still have hope, but hope is unfortunately hope is it's not hope.com. So
no hope.com yet. As Sailor got that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Point it towards Australia.
Yeah. So that'd be nice.
There's a few things to weigh up, but mining's within people's wheelhouse. Like most people, if as I said, if you know how to network, like dial into your modem, then that's the first basic step to talk to a miner, and then from there, it's pretty. You plug them in, they run, full tilt. So the other thing I would say, if you are going to look at S19s, you've got an issue then if how you're going to run them at home. So not a lot of people realize this. They draw a lot of power. So they're 3 kilowatts. You get 2 plugs. They split the power supply, so you're able to plug them into 2 sockets. But you cannot, by sort of not letter of the law, but by ratings, you can't plug that into a double GPO. GPO just being your normal standard double socket.
Yep.
That's only rated for 10 amps.
10, yeah.
An S19 is going to draw 14. So you're going to melt that if you try and plug both of them into the same socket.
So you're either going to trip or start a fire in your house. Is that?
Yeah. So you probably won't trip. You probably won't trip the breaker, but you will probably melt, right, that GPO.
Yeah.
And then you'll trip something. So if it melts and then wires touch, that's
what does an S9 draw?
S9's about 5 amps.
So that's fine.
That's fine. You can run 2 S9s on 1 GPO at the limit. You'll probably have to replace that GPO every year or so. It's gonna. I mean, these things run hot as well. So when you get miners like the big guys get like a normal Sparky and to look at these things, normally you've got if you're going to do an installation for without getting too bogged down in the detail, but if you're going to do an installation as a Sparky for a new installation, like a new industrial complex or a shed that's got welders, there's an assessment that you do for your cable selection, your breaker selection on how much duty cycle those welders are going to, because no welding shop has welders running 24/7 all the time. So there's a duty cycle that they say, okay, none of these things are going to be running all the time and they won't be drawing at the same time. So you can discount how much current they're going to draw by X amount, right? Let's call it 80% for arguments. With Bitcoin mining, those things are running hot as much as they can. And that's the whole point, right? You want them running as hot as they can 24/7. So, I was on a call with a guy in Adelaide who's running a pretty sophisticated operation at a solar farm, just getting some ideas. And he melted wires. He melted his circuit boards and his GPOs because the Sparky underrated. Didn't understand mining, Bitcoin mining, the nature of it. He had a large installation and he underrated his cables. And you can start fires. These are the sort of considerations you've got to worry about. From a home mining perspective, if you've got one S9, you're going to be okay. You might cause some nuisance tripping if you don't. So the idea is those 2 plugs, ideally, you put them on 2 separate GPOs and ideally on 2 separate circuits in your house. So normally you open up your switchboard in your house, you're going to have 2 power circuits.
Yeah.
At least 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, You want to try and split that load for one miner across 2 power circuits, ideally, because they're running so hot. If you go and then turn your kettle on and your wife's got the clothes in the clothes dryer, you're going to trip that breaker out because you're going to go out on overload. So they're the sort of things you've got to consider. So S19s they're basically a very heavy power device, unlike anything you've probably got in your house.
But for home mining, S9s you think are adequate?
S9s are fine. S9
So
you can
if
plug
somebody
in away.
has one S9, or would you recommend you got to have 2, 3, 4?
Oh, look, it depends on what you want to achieve. So one S9 plugging away, like for your install, I'd probably be looking at 2 or 3 for that, because you're going to have, I don't know what your home situation's like, how much you're going to use when you're home, but you want to be maximizing everything. You want to change your whole life around using as much energy as you can through the day versus at night, because you're going to be exporting above your 5 kilowatt, right? Your 5 kilowatts, what you're limited to, you're generating 12, what did you say, 12 kilowatts on your roof?
13, but yeah, close enough.
13. So if you're not drawing 6, you're wasting your time, because the max you can export, if I heard right, it was 5 kilowatts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're not
under certain circumstances get up to 7 locally here, but generally it's 5.
You need to actually get put an application in, and then they approve it. But then, as I was saying to Hats, I think possibly before we started, like I've now signed off to export 5, but it's like, well, if I'm going to do this, why do I want to give them 5 for fuck all can I not just say no? Fuck you. I'll
pay you for the energy.
I'll just pay you for the energy that I use and let me use the rest.
So I would be trying to get a hold of maybe 3, right?
Yep.
And then draw 3 kilowatts, basically a little bit more. It's going to be like 3.9 kilowatts from 3 S9s. If you sort of run them at their sort of max power draw recommended. I mean, you could argue you can go a bit hotter, but 1.3 kilowatts per S9 is a good rating. And then, and then when you're home, at home, provided you don't have air conditioners, 3 kilowatts is normally enough for a home to be running at any one time. You could be running an aircon. I mean, your fridge is going, fans in your house, lights in your house, quite comfortably 3 kilowatt kind of thing. And then, so basically, if you're not doing that mining, then your generation's wasted.
Yeah. That's what it already feels like. So,
and then you can do things like put them on timers. Like you can put a little GPO timer in, run it through the timer, and then you can just set that itself so that 7:30 a.m. it comes on, 5 p.m. it turns off, kind of thing. Whatever you sort of suit it to your sunlight, and you can do that, and that's very easy. That's very accessible. You can buy those things at Bunnings.
Yeah, cool.
I'm just thinking, we own citadelmining.com. We own lots of domains, Daz.
I've got no idea what we own. Yeah, Hats has got the database.
I just take the money and pretend like I bought domains. Man just stacked sats. But yeah, it sounds like you might need it. No, but in all seriousness, like with somebody with your skill set, work-wise, but also your mindset on the Bitcoin side of things, you must be starting to be approached by people who are interested in larger setups than Brendo, right?
Not yet. At DazB1 on Twitter.
Absolutely. But I'm serious. Like, if there is a business out there thinking, holy shit, we have got, let's say we've got a massive warehouse and we've got solar on top of the whole thing, and we've got a huge amount of excess and we're getting bugger all for feeding it into the grid now. Daz is your man.
That's an absolute.
Are you interested in being that man, or
that is honestly the ideal merging of all the loves, right? So I love electricity, I love energy. That's what I chose to do for a career. I chose to waste 7.5 years of my life with a uni degree, and that would just be the love of all things coming together. I mean, there's a couple of Telegram groups I try and keep actively involved in, but as I said to you boys offline, I'm working on some other content in the background, which has kept me busy the last few months. But I've kept an open channel to I'm going to stuff his name up, but Lord Fusatua in Tonga.
Oh yes, yeah.
Been chatting to him, so I mean that'd just be ultimate to start to look at how Bitcoin can fit in, and that'd change Tonga, the whole country. Do you know what I mean?
That's the emerging opportunity is someone like you that just knows the shit and can go, right, this is what you need to do to get your mining setup happening, home or industrial or commercial.
And that was why the main driver really for getting the miners for myself is I just wanted to get my hands on some,
to learn, so you could
play with it.
Yeah,
exactly. Load the firmware, adjust the firmware. So there's a big plug for Brains OS Plus. So I highly recommend, if you're going to get miners for home, Brains. Yeah,
just to get the efficiency out of the maximum efficiency out of your miner. Basically, is that why you?
Yeah, but what else I noticed, which I didn't realize, was it makes them quieter. So if you're going to run these at home, they're noisy, man. They are fucking noisy.
Have you got yours in a box and vented and all that sort of shit?
No, haven't bothered. They're in my shed at the moment, but the next iteration is I'm going to try and get some cooling fluids and take the fans off and just get them quiet, and then I'll
immersion. Is that immersion stuff? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, immersion cooling. So there's fluids you can dip them in, which obviously, that sounds crazy, dipping something electronic into fluid, but these fluids are like rated for like 60 kV. So the spark gap between them, they don't conduct. So they're very purpose built. There's not much. The challenge is at the moment, you can't get them in Australia all that readily because the market's not there, but that's increasing, right? So there's more and more people starting to get interested in this stuff, and we're fucking hot, man. We are, up far north Queensland, it's hot, it's humid. The harder you can, if you can keep them cool, you can push them a bit harder and you get more hash out of them. So that's one of the things that Brain's firmware will map, is it will be very, very good at keeping a distinct temperature. So you will set that you want it ideally run at, say, 90 degrees for chip temperature, and it will regulate that very, very well by ramping the fans up, ramping the fans down in order to keep that maintained. Any more than 90, you're probably going to reduce the life of the hash board. So there's a fair few considerations, but if you can then dip that in a cooling fluid and you can get that cycling through, and there's a few different ways you can do that, whether you cycle that fluid out into a cooling system or you just let it sit and you have fans and radiators and all this sort of stuff. There's nth degree of variation you can do there, but the whole idea is you dip it in there and it brings it down in temperature, and you can then ramp up the hash rate, and then you can get a bit more out of it. And there's pretty good data to suggest you can push them, like you can get like 25% more out of just by dipping them in cooling fluid.
Have you got to add your own heat sinks and things to these devices, or do they just come ready to go?
The S9s, the hash boards, they've got very good heat sinks on both sides because they're fucking hot. They are really hot, and that's the whole point with those fans. They're big DC fans as well. Can't remember the current rating, but they're fairly high rated, and that's the noise, is those fans pushing air through, trying to get them cool. And they're big aluminium heat sinks on both sides of these boards. So these boards, I should go and grab one to show you, but I've got one pulled apart at the moment. But there's heat sinks on both sides just to try and keep the chips cool.
Yeah, cool. Okay. I had another question, but I lost it.
On mining?
Yeah, totally.
But
I could talk for hours.
But that wants to be that is your target. That's your wheelhouse. You're like, if that sort of opportunity presents itself, or you create that opportunity, that's where you want to be. Let's be clear to anybody listening. That's where Daz wants to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. That's definitely something to explore. Yeah.
That's definitely going to happen. It's just like everything else. It's like you can see what's going to happen. It's just not happening fast enough. It's like waiting for evolution sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. And there's so much opportunity, like just to plug one of the articles, I guess. So I wrote 2 articles, Energy for Plebs, basically, just to give, a little bit of insight into everything we've really been speaking about, not so much the firmware and so forth, but doing calculations to work out how much current's going to draw and see how much you can run at home, right? So S19, I said before, you can still run an S19. You can run 2. You can run 3. You've just got to know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You could argue as soon as you start getting a bit higher, then you're probably outside of what a typical house would draw. But I wrote a couple of articles there just to illustrate to the plebs what you need to consider if you want to do some of this. And then the second article I wrote is actually looking at the opportunities within the Australian energy market, because we're one big connected grid, right, around the southeast. So Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and Tassie, and into South Australia. We're all one big connected transmission network, and we've got geographically dispersed generation sites, whether that's coal or gas or solar and wind and all these different generation sites. But we're one big interconnected grid. And then we've got an overarching body called AEMO, AEMO, who they're the market operator, and they forecast demand. So one key sort of thing just to illustrate the challenges with energy markets is if you want to switch your light on, there's got to be a generator running with enough capacity in order to supply that demand, supply that energy for your demand, right? And then you extrapolate that out for everybody who wants to turn their TVs and cook dinner and do all that. The generators have got to be running. We don't store energy. And there's a little, you could argue, there's a little bit in South Australia where they store in a battery that Tesla made. But aside from that, you've got to be generating at the time that people want to use it, right? So there's a couple of opportunities there with like how much this plant that they've got to have online. You can't just flick a switch and turn that on. So they've got to be running all the time, and you get this phenomenon called minimum demand. So there has to be a minimum demand in the network in order for that to be worthwhile switching on that generation. And you get these little arbitrage opportunities where if you're on the cusp of, do I fire up a new generator or don't I? And how much money am I going to waste if I fire this other generator up? Yep. That's where Bitcoin mining is the perfect opportunity to step in and say, we will be your demand of last resort or first resort, depending on which way you want to look at it. And then if we get a heat wave and everyone fires their air conditioners up and we're at peak, you just tell us, and it can be automated. You don't even have to make this a conscious thought. Yeah. The market operator can just go, you guys switch off X amount of load now. And it happens, because Bitcoin mining, you switch one of these miners on, it's up and running within 30 seconds. I don't know, a minute, maybe 2 at most. You know what I mean? It's up and it's running and it's hashing away. It doesn't take long. And you can switch it off just by switching it off at the wall. It's no ramp down. You don't need to ramp it down or anything like that. It's such a nimble, and it's just a massive opportunity.
I actually saw there was a tweet today or yesterday. It was one of the big miner operations in the States. Not sure if it was Texas, but probably. That have done that exact thing coming into.
It was Texas. I think it was Texas. I think so.
Coming into their summer season, I guess it would be that they're looking at. They've negotiated some sort of agreement that will turn off if there's a sudden requirement for power. Obviously there's a monetary exchange.
Yeah.
But the point is that the power. If you want us to consume it, we can. If you don't want us to consume it, we can turn off and immediately.
Exactly.
And yeah, I mean,
and keep that minimum load or whatever it is at the required level. Which are energy companies aware of this idea? Like
surely by now, like they've got to be starting. I mean, if they're not, they're completely naive. It has to. So there's already some, like this guy who was kind enough to take us through his facility in South Australia. He is already talking with the market operator. He has a relay within his switchboard that tells him what the price is. So there's this other arbitrage opportunity. Finish off this thought with this guy. So he knows. They can tell him to switch off. They can tell him what the market price is. He can choose to ramp up how much he's got going and to match all that. So that those conversations are already happening at that level. Surely, like he's got that infrastructure and that already in place. So surely that's just going to accelerate from here. And there's been I haven't been following many of the companies too closely, but I believe there's one in Byron Bay, which is quite a big sophisticated operation. So they're up and running. It's coming. But there's such a massive opportunity for here. And like there's another point in that article that I wrote, sort of sidetrack, but is we're a country full of desert. Just the solar opportunity alone. Do you know what I mean? Like for you to go and build a solar farm, you've got to have somewhere to connect it to. Right. And that's where the challenge lies is, okay, we could go out in the middle of the desert, but there's no one who lives there and there's no infrastructure out there. So it's not profitable because we got nowhere to, you got to use it, right? Or you lose it. So what you could do is then start looking at some of these geographical areas and say, all right, we can build a solar farm out here. We can plant a Bitcoin mining rig on site, monetize that straight away and start building up a treasury to a point then where we can then go and connect out onto the grid and start to build that transmission network back out. And, there's just so many opportunities like that just getting wasted. Another good example for that is like hydro generation sites, particularly up here in far north Queensland. You get a weir. The weir is full. It's wet season. But the market, down south, there might be sun shining. So you've got all this solar coming onto the network and then you don't have enough demand. So what happens to the network price for energy generation? It drops and it can go to zero. It can even go negative. So these guys are sitting here, can't generate because there's no demand.
Yeah.
And they've got all this rain basically pouring over their spillways running out into the ocean. It's like watching fuel fall down the outside of the dam. So, you could go and park a container of Bitcoin miners on site, say to them, every time this happens, we will take that and we will just island. You just connect yourself off from the network and your own little generation island, and we'll just take all that. Rather than it running into the sea, fire up your generators and we will take 2-3 megawatts worth of bloody load off you.
And this is exactly the same thing as what's happening with the flared gas. It's just excess energy that needs to be consumed, and if it's not consumed, it's lost, or worse than lost, it could be a negative. So you just have to find, like any stranded energy resource, it doesn't matter whether it's green, nuclear, coal, it doesn't matter. Stranded energy anywhere in the world is going to be the next sought after thing by Bitcoin miners. They're just going to chase it. And first, I think to begin with, it'll be the Bitcoiners that move in and take the advantage, but ultimately
it's a match made in heaven. There is no
sorry, man.
Sorry, we're the internet dropped out again.
Yeah, dropping off. I tell you what, though, mate, this conversation has made me ridiculously bullish.
It is. I mean, it's the when you see the opportunity, and it's just, I mean, as you're saying with that example in Queensland, it's kind of like flushing money down the toilet. Like that's you can just see it running out. Like that's it. There's not like such potential there, and you don't. And also, you're securing the network, all the other things for everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The benefits for everybody there is incredible.
The only caveat I would put on that point, which it warrants a bit of conversation and a little bit of thought, is the operational time. So obviously, if you go and you expend and you go and buy S19s at 17.5 grand, there's a minimum operational time. There's going to be an equilibrium there between how often can I run and still be profitable and get my money back. So that's all things are going to be modeled and considered. Because if you go and park yourself down next to this hydro generator, but they let you operate for 30 days of the year, obviously that's not warranted, which is great. Why you can containerize it and you can go and ship off and go and move next door. But by the same token, if you park down on a solar farm and they can only generate on average 6 hours a day or something like that, then again there's going to be a cutoff between the level where you're profitable and where you're not. So there's a few things that are going to be considered and flushed out there, but by the same token, like, you got to explore it. Like
that's true. But my counter to that would be, as mining operations become bigger, they have access to capital in fiat world, which is at 0% or 1%. So they can actually finance this with fiat and pay for the whole thing with fiat and get the whole benefit in Bitcoin. So the payback time is going to be so much quicker because the devaluation of the fiat over the same period of time as well.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Excellent point. And just to one of those articles, I'll give you a little example of what, like, just the possibility of generation that's out there. So like the spare capacity, right, with all these generational, I think it's at any one time, just off the top of my head, I'm probably going to butcher this, but 12.5 gigawatts is in spare capacity at any one time. So if we took a very conservative 5% of that and we went and we put miners in, and that's basically saying that at any one time we've got 5% capacity of that we could be mining with. I think the outlay is something like $3.8 billion to put this mining rig in, but you're generating a profit of $2 billion a year. So it's 2 years to pay back, and then everything past that's cream. Mm-hmm. And you've basically got, a 4-year cycle on most of these S19s from sort of all, you can push them a bit harder, or if you can keep them cool and all that sort of thing, that could be pushed a bit longer. But, that's just a really back of the table, back of the napkin calculation on what potential is out there.
Yeah, it's huge. I would recommend anybody, I'll knock this in the head a little bit, but I would recommend anybody go look at Daz's 2 articles on energy, just as an individual, just to talk, because it's basically a tick list. It's like, he explains it from the electrician side to begin with, and then you get into the sort of tick list of the mining, and what your considerations are in terms of your home circuit or the safety or these kind of things, and it's very, very worth the read. So if you're thinking about it, go have a look at it. I would like to talk about your stuff with Foss. Can we talk about that? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, giddy up.
Okay, so over to you, man.
So I guess if we sort of take a step back, so I wrote an article on bonds. So bonds were, if we go back to our earlier conversation about sort of what motivated me to start writing these articles, is I did a heap of research on the macro side of stuff and all that sort of thing, and sort of come to a conclusion. I was having all these conversations at work with guys, and the more you have a conversation, the more you got to teach people, the deeper understanding that you sort of get of a subject. And I thought there's an opportunity here for me just to put some of this down in writing. And it was mainly targeted at my friends and family. I didn't expect it to sort of go anywhere. But one of those articles I wrote was on bonds and sort of how they fit in the macro picture and how they work. And like, you know, because they're pretty confusing for most people. It's like, oh, I sort of understand it's a loan, but how the fuck does it work? Like the coupon and duration and all these sort of things. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to spew this out in an article form, and I ended up sending that to Foss one day. So Greg Foss, obviously 30 years plus worth of risk management, mainly a bond trader. I sent it to him and he's a fucking just a super approachable, super nice dude. Yep. Just sent it to him on Twitter and said, mate, I wrote this to try and help people. Would you mind running your eye over? Because I don't want to look like a dick, basically, if I've got anything wrong. And he sort of come back to me, said like, he was, you know, pretty impressed and just said, there's probably not much I would change in this. And then a few months go by and he gets in contact with me and he says, there's a surgeon in the US who's come up with a great idea. Would you be interested in chatting to him? Which we did. And then we've basically built a team up. So the surgeon, Jason Sansoni on Twitter, that's what he goes by. He came up with this idea that, you know, there's so much finance information here that's not accessible to everybody. And he had an idea of doing deep dives on, say, you take a Lynn Alden article or a Luke Groman article and you distill it down to say, what the fuck are these people talking about? Because not everybody can follow that, right? Which is true. And then so we sort of looked at it another layer again and said, well, you know what? I would really like to focus in on the people I started writing these articles for. So the friends, the family, and all that. And I sort of over feedback from my articles, it was even, you know, you build up all this assumed knowledge that you take for granted, that you understand volatility and you understand all these technical terms that you forget what people know and what people don't know. So what we wanted to do was just strip it right back, bare bones, and just make it as accessible to everybody as possible. What we had, the idea in my mind was, I want to be reaching the checkout girl. Do you know what I mean? I want to be reaching anybody who slaves away, wasting their life for wages. I just wanted to take some of these concepts, strip all the shit out that we don't need, and just keep it really bare bones. Your money's fucked. This is what they're doing. They're printing it hand over fist. You don't realize, because there's this hidden tax called inflation, you're getting fucked over. And we've been told all these things in order to get ahead are wrong. You can't put your money in a bank because there's bank bail-in laws. They'll fucking seize it on you, you know? So you're taking on risk, and what reward are you getting? Nothing, because they're suppressing interest rates. So there's all these concepts that you don't need to know the whys or the hows or necessarily, but, you know, just to illustrate, your money's fucked. You can't save it. What else are you going to do with it? And so what we did is there's now 6 of us sort of come together. So there's Pleb Music. He helps out with Safedine. He does a lot of the media, the background. He's doing all his splicing for his pods and his audiobooks and all that sort of stuff. He's the media content creator. Seb Bunny is a Canadian guy who's written some articles for Bitcoin Magazine. So him and I have been working on that wage earner course, right? And then we've got James Lavish. He's another friend of Foss's. He's a risk manager. So him and Jason are working on the deep dive stuff. And then Foss is obviously helping us with connections and financing and all this sort of stuff. So long story short, hoping to have the bare bones course, the financial literacy course, with sort of Bitcoin being we've really tried hard to strip. We don't want to shove Bitcoin down people's throat, but we want them to come along with the journey and come to their own conclusion that Bitcoin is a solution, not the only solution, but a solution into how to build wealth over time. And that course is, we're hoping to have that launched by Bitcoin 2022 conference, if all goes well. So Seb and I, like I was saying to you, I think I was saying offline, I've had coronavirus the last week, and I've been in this fucking caravan, and me and Seb, he's in Canada, and we've just been Zoom calling and just writing content and just polishing, and we would have read that fucking thing like oh, who knows? But we're just trying to get at, just distill it down, take all the crap out. Because when you write, like my articles, I've ended up writing articles to explain bonds, and they're 30-minute reads. People aren't going to sit there and want to learn about bonds for 30 minutes. So what can you take out, but what do you have to leave in for them to get a good understanding?
That's such an important, I think, an important thing to do too, because like you can kind of sell the power of Bitcoin to your family and friends and stuff as best as you can verbally, but as soon as you go read this, or they're just like, oh, thanks, but I'm not. And even when you send the damn thing, it's like he's not.
How many times have you sent me a message that says, if I was trying to orange pill this guy, what article would you send to them? And it's been, we're debating, should we send them 10 hours of Breed, Love and Sailor?
Yeah, no.
Like that's, and it's like, is that person ready for that? Or, is it a Ross Stevens thing, or is it a,
it's so hard to get. It's so hard to get the right thing.
Well, that's the point. Is I think that if all of us start to just contribute, we're doing this. Hopefully, somebody has get some value from it. You're doing the writing. You're doing the course. Preston is doing his, trying to attack, from maybe a traditional finance guy. That's who he's going to get naturally. And then you get, Max and Stacey, who will attract the wackies, which I love them. But it's just that we just need somebody for everyone, and it also has to be everywhere in the world. And we've got a guy coming on the pod in a couple of weeks' time, and he sent me a link to say, oh, if we could do it in a format that's sort of similar to this, that was on a podcast in Finland. And you know how the Scandinavians are so wonderful with their English. And I've not listened to it, and I was thinking, that's probably going to be fine, but I better listen to it to do the guy the courtesy of listening to the pod, and it's all in Finnish, and I'm like, oh, holy shit, right? Right, I just assume your assumption is wrong, right? You're assuming this knowledge that somebody doesn't have. And, this guy, because his English is probably better than mine on Twitter, we just have to if we all just put in. I had a tweet recently, mate. If we all orange pill 2 people. It'll take, and this is going to the Jeff Booth thing. It takes 33 days before we got the whole world. 33 days. If we all got 2 people. 33 days and we got the whole world.
I'll be knocking on some doors.
I mean, so I just think if we can do 3, if you can do 3, you're pulling your weight.
Yeah, hang on, wait for it. Hi, how's your trading going?
It's like
show boobs.
Yeah. It's trying not to be. It's very difficult when you're really, really enthusiastic about something not to just come across as a salesman.
Yeah, well,
we all hate salesmen.
That's the point too. Is you get to this point where, like I've been running some courses too. So I got like a death by PowerPoint thing, 3 sessions. Just anybody, like, I go and, without getting bogged down in coronavirus talk and all that sort of shit. But there's all these Telegram groups popping up with people, very aligned in their states overstep the mark, governments overstep the mark, and I'm like sitting on the fringes here going, Bitcoin fixes this.
Yep. You sound like the Wigan bitch of the West then.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, hey, g'day guys, come look at me. And so I've built this sort of, and I've got a Zoom subscription, and I've been trying to say, look, here's something. If you can take the money separate money from the state, you take away their power. If you're really serious about this, you can't fuck around with the money, right? And so many people are so close to, I'm seeing them as the prime candidate for orange pilling, that they're so close because they realize government's corrupt. They just haven't got to the money thing yet, but they're so fucking scared of it. I don't know what deep dark webs that I've been getting some really vicious pushback. But on the other side, there's, and I'm doing these courses with 5 to 10 people at a time, running in Thursdays. That's why some of these, have clashed with me trying to meet up with you guys. Is I've been doing that as well on the side, just running through this, and it takes, you can't fucking orange pill someone in 10 minutes. Otherwise you're going to sound like an evangelical fucking lunatic. Yeah. You've got to step them through. And I don't even bother anymore. If someone says, hey, what's Bitcoin about? Say, have you got 4 hours?
Yeah.
Because
I can't tell you in 4 minutes.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember you and I went to the pub one day, and I said, we started with, right, we got to go back to what is money. And he's looking at me as if to say, What are you talking about? Like,
No, it was more like, are you going to fucking order first?
I just went to the bar and I paid for the beers. That's the money. Like, yeah, and that's where you start. That's where you have to start. Because you
have to. So funny you say that, because my course, the PowerPoint presentation, slide 1, what is money? The course that we've just written, module 1, what is money? Every single fucking time.
Has to be.
Because if you don't understand the problem, you're never going to understand the solution.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how are you finding the people for the course?
Just randomly, just like that. So I've got the first couple of times was just friends and family, Facebook group.
But it's generally local, or it's around the world, or whatever.
Anyone who wants to tune in. So you know, I've kept the net pretty close because I don't want just randoms in there. Because what you got to avoid is the freaking crypto lunatics, right? Who are basically just going to make a pest of themselves. And really, so I've focused on core friendship groups for a start, core family groups. I've run it 3 times now, you know, so not a lot, but like keep it small, keep it simple, and anybody's genuinely interested in learning about it, come along. But I'm trying to avoid spreading the net too wide because I don't want to spend half the fucking time talking about why fucking shit won't be the next fucking Bitcoin. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just not. While I touch on other cryptos in there, basically just to say, look, I'm not going to fucking stop you gambling, right? But just know what it is. And if you're going to fucking gamble, make sure you've got, you know, the 90% Bitcoin allocation. And if you want to go and fucking roll the dice with 5% in shitcoin, just know what you're doing. Know that it's a gamble. You might come up, you know, you can go down you can play roulette at the casino with the same sort of odds, right? But know the difference, know what you're fucking doing, and be prepared to wear the loss because there's rug pulls fucking everywhere. So, you know, just keeping the message simple, but like you say, you just gotta spread the net out. And like, I'm just so fucking passionate about just helping people realize that the system is fucking completely engineered to keep you fucking working. The elites want you to make their shit. You know, they want you to keep their lives, and like that, somebody's going to have to do it, right? But like, you can. The whole point is, do you really want to be working to your 67? Like, you've ruined your body, you've ruined everything, all your good years, and you might have enough to retire on at the end, or do you want to fucking have a good crack at it, put in the hard yards, roll out at 50, and enjoy the fucking last years of your life while you still fucking can? You know?
Yeah.
Can't say it better than that, mate. Will we wrap it up?
That's awesome. What a way to finish.
What a rant. What a rant.
That's on a rant.
Go on, Daz.
Get into it.
Can't get better than that, mate. Wonderful. You're 100% right, and there's nothing I can say that's better than that. So,
well, yeah, before we go, can you give everyone like one more shout out to find your stuff?
The Medium stuff, and put the course potentially, and then maybe the thing that's coming next if you're wanting to do that.
Sure. I don't know if you can hear. Can you hear that fucking fire alarm going?
Oh yeah.
Is that what it is?
That's like that's you getting censored, Daz.
All right. Wait, hang on. Who are those guys taking him away?
Here's your Sparky. I can pull the battery out. There we go. Hey, so all right, that's gone now. That was really loud. At DAZBEA number 1. Don't ask me why, but that's what it is. DazB1 on Twitter. You can find me on Medium. I think that's, as I said, I've got random things. DAZBEA, I think, on Medium. You can find my articles. But if you jump on Twitter, you'll be able to find the links to the.
Oh, you've gone on Neo. Hang on, you've gone on Neo on us again.
And
hang on, mate. Go back. You were gone on Neo again.
I've gone on what? Sorry.
No, you've gone all like retarded. I shouldn't say that.
Adrian.
I don't know. Is it better now?
Yeah, good night. Go.
Is it all right now?
So we got Medium.
Adrian.
We got Medium, and we got
Medium, and then
Twitter.
Look. Okay, so just keep posted that course. Hopefully we get that out by April if all goes well. We got a lot of work to do, but the content's written. It's just a matter of getting a platform out, and follow us on Twitter. Just a shout out and thanks to you boys for having me on, man. It's been a fucking blast. I love.
Mate, very welcome. Thank you. Any?
No, we're losing it. We're gonna have to cut him loose.
Yeah, get rid of him. Get rid of him. Lose him.
Daz, that was awesome, man.
Brendo, see you up.
Yeah. I will look forward to seeing you. Oh, hang on, that's a dog. Serious dogs. Is that an issue?
Money in the
Dogs as
yeah, no, I'll edit that out.
Look at that. No, it's not really, but I just want him to.
I'll pay.
That's a dog show. Yeah.
Thanks, Daz.
See you, man.
Hey guys, if you've made it this far, thanks so much for listening. The plan with the pod is to do sort of guests one week and myself and Brendo the other week, so hopefully that's working for you. If you don't like one of them, just listen to the one you do like. If you want a little bit more information from us, you can find it at bitcoin-first.com/learn.